welcome to episode 9 of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. Jumping right into the news, it's been announced that Tim Blake Nelson will play Harvey Elder, otherwise known as the Mole Man, in the new Fantastic Four movie. The role is described as an eccentric, socially awkward scientist, so Tim Blake Nelson won't be Mole Man in the movie, but perhaps he'll go supervillain Mole Man in a later installment. Also in Marvel news, there's a new character debuting in Amazing Spider-Man number 4 due out in July, a female character known only by the name of Silk so far. Apparently she was bit by the same radioactive spider that gave Peter Parker his powers, so she's kind of going to be retconned in, and we'll see where that goes. Over on the DC side of things, there's 3 weekly series that you may have heard about. One of them's already started, that's Batman Eternal, which the first issue came out April 9th. The other 2 are forthcoming. The New 52 Futures End first issue will actually be on Free Comic Book Day, May 3rd. That's a 0 issue, and then number 1 will come out a week later on May 7th. The 3rd weekly series won't be out until October. It's entitled Earth 2 World's End. The interesting thing about all 3 of these weekly series is they're all set to end at the end of March 2015. And the following month, April 2015, will be the 30th anniversary of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, DC didn't make an official announcement about when all 3 of these series were going to end. Dan Didio actually mentioned something on his Facebook, not realizing that it hadn't already been announced. Whoops, sorry about that, Dan. Anyway, this has caused a lot of speculation with what DC might have planned for the 30th anniversary of Crisis and all 3 of these series coming to an end at the same time. Might we see an end to the New 52 DC or some other major shakeup? Who knows, only time will tell. Over on the TV side of things, SyFy announced that 4 comic series are well on their way to being adapted for the small screen. Ronin, the classic samurai story by Frank Miller, Letter 44 by Charles Soule about a new president having to deal with extraterrestrials, Clone, which is written by David Schulner, who will also write the series. That one is a comic that's put out by Robert Kirkman's Skybound imprint. Kirkman will serve as an executive producer on the show. And the last one is Pax Romana, about a special forces team that goes back in time to ancient Rome trying to prevent World War III. That's a comic that was put out by Image Comics, and it's by Jonathan Hickman. So we look forward to seeing all 4 of those sometime in the next few years. The first 2 comics I'm going to cover today are Flash number 30 and Flash Annual 3. These books are the first 2 issues by the new creative team of co-writers Robert Venditti and Van Jensen. Brett Booth is handling the pencils with Norm Rapman inking him, and Andrew Dahlhaus is on colors. Flash Annual 2 actually flips back and forth between the present-day Flash and the future Flash. Future Flash is handled by the regular art team, whereas present Flash is penciled by Ron Frenz with inks by Livesay. Now the story picks up in Flash 30 with Forever Evil having just ended. Barry Allen is back at work as a forensic scientist with the Central City Police Force, but due to the traumatic events of Forever Evil, everyone on the police force has to go and see a psychologist to be sure that they're mentally fit for duty. Barry's carrying around a lot of guilt because he feels, as the Flash, he should have been able to be more effective and have done more during the Forever Evil event to prevent all this damage that was done to his city. So the writers do a really good job of showing all the trauma that Barry has been going through. Here he's sitting in a room talking to the psychologist, but at the same time he's zipping off in between her questions to do what he can to help repair the city. I feel the writers have set up a few interesting subplots. I won't give away too much here, but let's just say that if you have the time, you definitely should give this book a read. Over on the art side of things, Booth and Rapman have been working together for a long time, and it really shows. The art is very crisp and clean. I feel that's something that comes from years of collaboration by the 2 artists. One thing that I really enjoy about Booth's art is that even while Barry is running at super speed, he still gives a lot of characterization through the facial expressions. If there's one complaint I have about the art, sometimes Booth likes to really show off his dynamic pencils with big spreads and splash pages of the Flash, and then the other panels are sort of shoehorned in here or there, and it kind of breaks up the storytelling from panel to panel just a little bit. But it's a minor complaint. I'm a big Brett Booth fan, and the art really shines. The colors by Andrew Dahlhaus are very bright, and he does a great job of conveying some real brightness to Central City. Now, one thing about this issue that's been a little bit in the comic news was that it's the first New 52 appearance of Wally West. I'm not going to get too much into the details of that. I'll let you read it for yourself, but I will say that his appearance in this book is minor. In this week's Flash Annual 3, Wally West has a much larger role. As I mentioned before, this book is actually split up into two storylines, one with the present-day Barry Allen and one with the future Flash Barry Allen. Now in the present day, right at the beginning, Barry meets Wally. There's an interesting dynamic going on there. We don't really find out about Wally's connection to Iris until a little later, but what I really enjoyed about the present storyline was how Robert Venditti and Van Jensen really mixed an equal amount of Flash action with some nice character development from Barry Allen. Something I feel started to be a little lacking toward the end of the previous creative team's run. By contrast, the future Flash storyline is almost all action. There's a little bit of characterization. We don't totally understand everything Barry's been through in the ensuing years, but he does seem desperate, but we don't completely understand his motivations. But the action's all out, and the art on the future storyline is just outstanding. There's one hilarious line in the future Flash storyline that Rob Venditti wrote. Van Jensen was actually jealous, told me that he wished he'd written the line. Let's just say that gorillas do have fat fingers. So I definitely recommend these books. It's a great jumping on point for a new reader. If you haven't been following the New 52 Flash, this is the perfect time to jump on. I'm sure you can still pick up both issues at your local comics shop. The entire creative team does a great job of making the books both accessible and fun. There's nice characterization, there's intrigue, you want to know what happens next. I certainly recommend them. The last book I'm going to talk about today is Rye #1 from Valiant. This is a much anticipated debut issue from a character that was around in the classic Valiant back in the 90s. And ever since Valiant came back a couple years ago, Rye has been the character that Valiant fans have been clamoring for. Anytime you went to a panel, anytime you stopped by the Valiant booth, all you heard was, when are you guys coming out with Rye? I think Valiant took a smart approach, waiting until the right time with the right writer and definitely the right artist. This book is written by Matt Kindt. The artist is Clayton Crane. The whole entire issue is painted. The coloring he used is dynamic. The art is just, I can't say enough about how great it is. If I had to say anything negative about the art, it might be along the same lines of what I said about Flash. Clayton uses some really large splash pages and large panels to really show off his artistic chops, and sometimes that leads to a little bit of lack of storytelling from panel to panel. But it's an extremely minor complaint. The art in this issue is just awesome. It would be amazing to own any of the original art from this story. It is just, if you don't even like Rye, if you're not familiar with Rye, don't care to read anything from Valiant, it's worth your money just to go pick it up. Don't even read it and just look at the pictures. It is well worth your $4. All that being said, I do think you should read it. Matt Kindt does a very good job of getting Rye off to a very intriguing start. So the year is 4001. Rye is the protector of Japan. Now, Japan has apparently been raised above the surface of the Earth, and it's run by some kind of a computer or AI known only as Father. Rye works for Father. At the beginning of the issue, we learned there hasn't been a murder in Japan in over 1,000 years, but that's all about to change. So with the first murder in over 1,000 years, Rye is sent by Father to discover what's going on. We're introduced to a teenage girl named Lula. She gives us a lot of exposition. It gives us a chance to learn about the current state of Japan. It's definitely a very advanced technological society. Perhaps the most interesting thing about it is, while I was reading this and it is supposedly happening 2,000 years in the future, I could very easily see Japan advancing along this course and ending up exactly how Matt Kindt has portrayed it here. The overall vibe of the story I got, sort of an old pulp murder mystery, which is kind of strange against the backdrop of super high-tech sci-fi. So it was a really interesting dichotomy, and it really drew me in. I'm very interested to see where the story goes from here. I feel like this issue just barely scratches the surface on who Rye is. Valiant is putting out some very, very, very high-quality books, and you owe it to yourself. If you've heard the name Valiant, but you haven't given them a try, I think this is the book you should jump on and see what the buzz is about. Well, that's it for this episode. I want to thank you all for watching. Join me next time when I talk about a couple of top cow books, Think Tank and Aphrodite 9. I'll see you then.